William Morrow and HarperAudio present Cold Trail, a Garrett Kohl novel by Taylor Moore, performed by Jeremy Arthur. To the good stewards of the earth, I dedicate this novel. Part 1. Innocence, once lost, can never be regained. Darkness, once gazed upon, can never be lost. John Milton. 1. Kohl Ranch, Texas High Plains. It had been at least a week since Garrett Kohl had spotted the trespassers' tracks on the ranch. The first time he'd seen them hadn't rung any alarm bells, but with the second occurrence came a trail of blood. He had no problem if a deer was taken in hunger or desperation. In this case, though, the poacher had killed 3 bucks, cut off their antlers, and left the meat there to rot. As a former Green Beret, DEA special agent, and, more recently, an undercover operative for the CIA, Garrett had spent the better part of his life hunting people who didn't want to be found. For that reason, and a natural instinct for tracking, he was damn good at finding them. He'd hoped those days were behind him, but apparently he wasn't done just yet. His new area of operations was the place his forefathers had settled back in 1893, and his family had lived on ever since. His particular piece of heaven was 17,000 acres of ranch land, roughly 26 square miles of prairie, that ran north of the Canadian River, and beyond the majestic ridgeline that towered above their farmhouse. This 200-mile stretch of caliche cliffs, known as the Caprock Escarpment, spanned from New Mexico to Oklahoma and jutted up from the vast plains over 1,000 feet high in places. It divided the ranch nearly perfectly, marking upper and lower grazing areas of windswept heights of open savanna and river-bottom pasture plentiful with cottonwoods. Garrett turned to his son, Asadi, who was riding beside him on a red-roan quarter-horse named Scamp, and pointed at the footsteps in the snow. "Well, what's your assessment, outlaw? When were those tracks made?" Asadi dropped from the saddle and led the gelding up to the trail. He knelt and studied the prints for a good 10 seconds. "Late last night, or early morning hours." "And what makes you think that?" Garrett always pressed for a reason that would rule out any lucky guesses. Seems like kind of a narrow time frame, don't you think? Asadi took off a glove, reached into the divot and let his fingertips glide along the powder. "We got a few inches of snow yesterday afternoon, but there's a light dusting on top of the tracks, probably from what blew in today before dawn. Means he was here in between them." "And how do you know it was a he?" Garrett had never heard of a female poacher, but that wasn't the point. The point was never to make claim that you couldn't back up. "Sounds like you're weeding out about 50% of the population without any evidence." Asadi eyeballed the tracks for a moment and then turned back. "Boots are at least a size 12, D width, and the tracks are deep. Whoever made them was big and heavy. I've met some big old gals in my time." Garrett shot his son a wink to let him know that he was having a little fun. "Some of them wearing clodhoppers, too. Maybe it was one of them." Asadi rose from his crouch and stuck out his hand to shake on it. "Wanna bet?" Seeing dollar signs in Asadi's eyes, Garrett moved on from a wager he was sure to lose. "So where do you think he or she might be headed?" It was a bit of a difficult question. Whoever made the tracks had clearly tried to hide them. They'd taken a circuitous route back to the barbed wire fence that separated Kohl property from the neighboring Mescalero Ranch. The poacher was more than likely hunting deer from a vehicle. But given all the oil field traffic in the area, there was no way to narrow it down. Garrett hadn't expected to catch anyone in the act.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?